and they could move about, and they would move to a new space if the number of neighbours immediately around them, if the number of agents of the other type exceeded a certain proportion, exceeded a certain threshold. So on this model there are grey and black people, if you like, and then there are some white places where they can move to. So the idea was that you just go through the system seeing who was going to move depending on whether they were in a minority or not. And you just sort of do that a few times and see what came out of it. And this is very quickly what the model became, what it looked like. Very quickly this strong segregation appeared, even though in this case people will only move if greater than 45% of their neighbours are of the other type. So there is, if you like, prejudice in the system, but it's not strong prejudice. It's not looking at this end result. You might imagine that this must be a very intolerant society, but it's not. This is the result of the collective behaviour of all these individuals. And one implication of this is that whenever you give people the opportunity to make these choices that bring together like with like, then it's very likely that you have created the conditions for segregation of this sort. It might be segregation by class or culture or race or whatever. This is a message that politicians don't seem yet to have understood. In Britain in particular, there is a big move to give people choice of which hospitals they use, which schools they go to, and it's very clear that this is already leading to strong kinds of segregation. These sorts of ideas have also been used to understand cooperation and conflict and war. This is an area that has been looked at for a long time by political scientists who use what is called game theory to try to understand it, which is really just another kind of one of these agent-based models where the agents this time are faced with a choice of either cooperating with each other or being tempted to cheat and maybe gain some advantage by cheating. So there are well-defined rules that determine this, and people have started to look at how these rules might give rise to the spread of cooperation in a society, or how a society might be taken over by cheaters. And this is just an example of the sort of complicated behaviours that come out. And some of these studies raise pressing questions about things such as the role of enforcement in peacemaking and peacekeeping. Do we need people to, do we need some incentive to make sure that people cooperate with one another? So this new social physics that I've talked about relies on this belief that there may be some form of natural law that governs the way large groups of people behave and organise themselves. And this is the same belief that motivated Thomas Hobbes and John Stuart Mill and Karl Marx in previous times. But there's a crucial difference, really, in this new work. It doesn't imply that history is predetermined, and it doesn't really challenge the fundamental idea of free will. What it does show is that sometimes our individual free will may not matter very much, because the collective behaviour of a society is dominated by, if you like, the rules of engagement, the rules of interaction, rather than by what choices we as individuals make. So on the one hand, these new models make explicit allowance for the fact that we have choice, that we might respond differently to the same set of stimuli. And that there is not always a single rational best choice that we might make in a given situation. All that these models are really asserting is that those choices that we make are rarely independent. We are influenced by what each other chooses. And when that is the case, the outcome for the group, for society, can be non-intuitive, can be hard to predict. I would argue that the main value of this topic is often to challenge preconceptions about how society works. Policymakers are often linear thinkers. They assume that if we understand how individuals behave, we will understand what a population will do too. Now, I think it's time to move beyond that position and to acknowledge that society is interactive and that it's non-linear. And this physics-based modelling tells us not only that interactions may change the picture entirely compared to what lone individuals might do, it also shows that this complexity that it adds doesn't necessarily make the problem impossible, because there may be these robust modes of collective behaviour, as there are in traffic, for example, that don't depend on the fine details of individual actions and choices. Most of all, I think it's important to recognise that this approach to understanding human social behaviour isn't about, and mustn't be about, using science to tell us what to do, how to plan and govern and make laws and institutions. It's a tool that can help us understand the likely consequences of particular choices. No science can be a substitute for the wisdom and compassion that is needed to create better societies. This new social physics should be bold in the questions that it asks, but needs to be humble in the answers that it gives. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks very much, Phillip. It was a terrific talk. Lo repito otra vez. I think you'll need the translator for the questions. You have it here. Bien, Phil ha dicho muchas cosas y muy interesantes, pero sí, insisto, como decía en mi presentación, si queréis daros un gustazo y vamos, repetir estos ejemplos y muchos más, lo podéis encontrar en este libro que se llama Critical Mass. Yo quería empezar. Is it running?
I seem to have you.
Okay.
Not the translation.
Maybe another.
Is it? Do I need to go to another channel? Got it.
Okay. En primer lugar, quería preguntarte, Phil, y después iniciaremos un debate. La primera pregunta es global acerca de tu charla, porque has empezado, como en tu libro Masa Crítica, citando a los primeros científicos revolucionarios del siglo XVII y en particular a Hobbes, es decir, la gente que descubre que el hombre, que es una especie de máquina, puede ser tratado según unas leyes naturales y predeterminadas. Esto no es solamente un juicio científico, como has explicado muy bien, es también un juicio político. Es decir, si nosotros podemos estructurar un sistema monárquico muy fuerte basado en un leviatán estrictamente dictatorial, podremos anticipar cómo la gente, cómo los seres humanos nos desarrollamos. Es decir, no es raro que Hobbes apostase por un sistema político fuerte y por un sistema que se basase también en la ciencia para determinar nuestras acciones, ¿no? Y no es tampoco extraño, como has citado en uno de tus ejemplos, que muchos científicos de esa época también fueran políticos. Es decir, has establecido el paralelismo muy bien. Claro, luego nos has descrito una sociedad, y el ejemplo del coche es muy buena, en donde no se pueden tanto predeterminar una conducta maquinal, sino ciertas explosiones de familiaridad entre los humanos que se pueden gestionar de alguna manera. ¿Cómo te explicas, si no es así, que los políticos no hayan precisamente aprendido a gestionar estos caos para determinarlos mejor, como sí hacían políticos y teóricos como Hobbes? ¿Y qué sistema, cuando los políticos realmente aprendan esta nueva manera de hacer la ciencia, tendremos que urdir? Es decir, ¿necesitaremos una monarquía que sepa leer el caos de la sociedad? ¿Necesitaremos físicos políticos que sepan, cuando emerja una zona de caos, como pasaba con los coches, que la detecten e interactúen como hacían con esos barrios, porque me interesa mucho saber, así en el siglo XVII el sistema político que necesitaba la ciencia mecánica era muy claro. ¿Cuál es el sistema que va a dar, según tu opinión, este nuevo tipo de ciencia?
Really, the questions that are being raised now in economics are ones that go really to the